Allowing thousands to cross the border per day is not taking action on the border. And the fact that Joe and Democrats want you to think so just goes to show how little they think of your intelligence. The show starts now.
Today, I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border. I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. The simple truth is there is a worldwide migrant crisis. And if the United States doesn't secure our border, there's no limit to the number of people who may try to come here, because there's no better place on the planet than the United States of America. For those who say the steps I've taken are too strict, I say to you that be patient.
Be patient. After years of lying that our borders are secure, yesterday Joe's teleprompter admitted that they are not. After years of telling us he couldn't do anything about it without Congress, while he's forgiven student loans and sent money to Ukraine without Congress, Joe's poll numbers told him he had to do something. Well, not actually do something, but appear to do something. And that's exactly what his executive order on the border is. It's a mirage, a window dressing, a joke. So let's talk about what it actually does. It normalizes thousands of illegals a day and nearly 2 million per year with the exemptions as acceptable. What the order does is temporarily suspend the entry of illegals across the southern border once the number of average border encounters exceeds 2,500 a day over 7 days. That pause will stay in effect until 14 days after there's been a 7-day average of less than 1,500 encounters along the border. So let's start there with this crackdown. What a friggin' joke. What the hell reality are we living in where Biden capping the number of illegal aliens allowed at 2,500 is somehow tough border action? I was thinking this supposed Biden executive order limiting the number of illegal crossings to thousands a day is kind of like telling a thug that he can steal up to a certain amount and get away with it. But then I realized that's actually exactly what's happening in California, so we're screwed. Do you know how many illegals should be allowed? 0. Do you know how many should be deported? All of them. But shocker, the deportation part of his tough action, well, that doesn't exist. In fact, not only are the 2,500 illegals per day permissible, but the list of exemptions is as long as a CVS receipt. Those illegals who use the CBP-1 app, you know, the one that allows them to fly directly into the United States without crossing the border, the app that hundreds of thousands use to fly into airports around the country, yep, that's not included in this order. Unaccompanied children are also exempt. Those who face a medical emergency also exempt. This is a joke, and I know y'all are not dumb enough to fall for it. Joining me now with his take on all of this, I'm so excited and honored to have National Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Delgado. Art, you're the first person that I thought of when I heard Biden drivel on about this yesterday. So I want to just jump right in. I want to also talk about the fact that he mentioned the Border Patrol Council, saying that the Border Patrol Council endorsed that bipartisan Senate deal that was a couple months ago. So I want to get your thought. Do you endorse this new executive order that he proclaimed yesterday?
Oh, absolutely not. And thank you for asking me about the border bill that was endorsed. Look, there was 2 border bills that came up. One of them, it didn't get far. It's been sitting at the Senate. They haven't done anything about it. The other one was obviously the bipartisan bill, and that was because of the frustration and everything that there continues to be faced at the border. So we thought, hey, move that up, get the right picks in there, change some of it, add some of the bill that's already just been sitting there, and make it better. So it wasn't a perfect bill. It was, hey, take a look at it and try to fix it. Now, moving on to what we have now. Look, he had the power, or he found the power, I guess I should say, to be able to have this executive order and fix things correctly. And he didn't do so. So he can point the finger at the last administration. You can point the finger at the Senate, at Congress, whoever you want to. But ultimately, he was the one that could have fixed it. And he really did not. He didn't even come close. But what bothers me the most, this is where people need to understand. The cartels and the smuggling organizations will continue to take care of and see what's happening on the border. They run the border. So they're going to determine the first 2,500 that are going to cross, and I can guarantee you it's going to be military age men like they've been doing so. So then the back end, the other family groups that maybe would have had a chance or might have a legitimate asylum claim, you don't know, they're not going to get to come through because the lines already would have been full by the individuals that the cartel brought forward. But the worst of them all is the exemption on the underage individuals. And I'm saying underage individuals because when you say children, people think of small children. But this, what it comes down to is anybody under the age of 18, a juvenile. So you'll see 16 and 17 years old. That's what you've seen in the past. Or like we saw during the Obama administration when we had all those unaccompanied juveniles that came through, a lot of those, which no one knows where they're at anymore, by the way, and they're full-grown adults. That is what you're going to see. A lot of people even lying about their age, claiming to be underage to come through. So the exemptions are tremendous. And what that will do is that will continue to have Border Patrol agents out of the line in these processing centers having to take care of that. So now the gotaways are going to increase. The amount of failure to yields are going to increase. The runners that make Border Patrol agents chase them throughout the desert, all that is going to increase. There's going to be more pursuits on the freeways, putting more American lives at risk. This is catastrophic. And I know people are going to point the finger and say, oh, but it lowers the numbers. It's a good thing. It's not a good thing when you look at the whole picture. They did it the wrong way. I don't know who's advising them. I don't know who told them to do it this way, but there's so many holes, so many gaps. At the end, the only people that are going to gain from this is the criminals and the drug cartels.
All right, we know who did this because we know that this is by design. This is not supposed to be, oh, let's actually lessen the number of illegals coming across. It's let's appear to lessen. Let's make it the appearance that we've done something because there's an election exactly 5 months from today. That's what this is all about. But when I'm understanding this and going through this, I'm also thinking this gives Biden the power to shut down the border. He has the power now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he has to. Am I understanding that correctly? If we go over 2,500, that doesn't necessarily mean that this goes into effect. It means that Biden has the power to make it go into effect. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. And because of the exemptions, there's too many loopholes that people are going to, go ahead and fall into and say, hey, I have an emergency. This is what I have. There's going to be too many loopholes that they're going to try to expose to try to get through regardless. And the fix would have been easy, Tommy. This is what I've been screaming about the fix. Everyone that comes across the border, detain them. Do not release them. If they have a valid asylum claim, by all means, look at it. I'm not saying people don't have asylum claims. They probably do. There's a lot of them that might. But have a judge down there, asylum officers, asylum judges, immigration judges, detain everyone. If they have a valid one, go through while they're detained. Do not release people. The reason the numbers are crazy is because the word has been out for 3.5 years. 3.5 years, the word has been out. Come across, ask for asylum, you'll get released. That's what everyone has been thinking. That's what everyone's been doing. And it was caused by this administration. That's who you could point the finger at. They caused the mess. They haven't cleaned it up, and they refuse to do so. This is smoke and mirrors because the elections are around the corner.
Yeah, let's talk about those asylum claims because the Biden administration doesn't want anyone to talk about this, but they've also quietly gone under the radar and they've just dismissed these asylum claims that they don't even have to go in and adjudicate their claims. They've just said, hey, listen, you've been waiting for a while, just go ahead and you're free to go. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the amnesty that's been given to these people. They're not detained. They're made comfortable. They're allowed to go wherever they want to go. I mean, why wouldn't you come over right now? Why wouldn't you continue to come over when you know you're going to be released and you know that even if you had an idea that you were going to show up 3, 4, 5 years from now to your court hearing, that'll probably get excused anyway. So this to me is it's just such a joke. And I'm wondering what Border Patrol agents that are honest, that have been talking to you, that we don't get to hear from, what are they saying about this?
They know that. They realize it's a joke. The morale's been in the dumps for quite some time. They see the dangers that this is going to cause because, as I said, the cartels and the drug smugglers, they know what they're doing. They're going to go ahead and, move and adapt and try to figure out how to move groups in one area to the other. They know now that they at least think they would have a limit of 2,500 a day, and they're going to be able to mobilize those individuals in one particular spot, knowing that's still going to preoccupy agents. They're going to know where to move the unaccompanied juveniles, and you're going to see them in one location more than the other. That's why, I mean, look, it's obvious. When you start looking at the people that come across, you've seen there's people from certain parts of the world that cross more in one area than the other. You've seen it in Texas, where you've seen a bunch of individuals from Central America and Venezuela and Honduras that are coming through there. You're seeing it in Arizona, where you were seeing a lot of the people from Serbia, Egypt, Mauritania that were coming through there. You've seen it in Texas, where the majority of people are from China. That's done deliberately. That's the cartels telling them where they're going to cross. I recently spoke to a couple that had come across from Mexico. They flew to the Tijuana border. They were going to California. They were in Tijuana, Tommy. They were already there, yet they chose to cross in Arizona. No, they didn't choose to cross. The cartels told them, this is where you're going to cross, and that's what they relayed to me. You cross wherever they tell you to cross, not where you choose to cross. That shows you who's in control and who manipulates where people cross and the numbers themselves.
Well, I think it's just so bizarre to think that this number, this arbitrary number that's being thrown out, that 2,500, that's acceptable a day. That's almost a million, even if you just go by that number and you don't include the exemptions. But then if you include the exemptions, I mean, I don't really even know if you're lessening the flow at all. I think maybe you're spreading it out, maybe you're monkeying and you're fudging the numbers, but I don't think you're really changing anything. So to me, the fact that we're going to have Border Patrol agents, I mean, I think this is what people think of when they hear it. You're going to have Border Patrol agents going, okay, that's one, okay, clicker, two, clicker. It's like Disneyland, waiting for people to get on a ride. And the fact that the border, it's organized chaos, but it's actually organized chaos, because if you think that they're able to get a count on how many are coming over illegally, then why can't they just turn these people around? Is this all because they claim asylum? That's just the end all be all to all this? That's right. All you got to say?
No, and you're right. It's absolutely, there's going to be so much communication that's going to get lost, because one sector is going to have a certain amount of people in custody. Another sector is going to have different. How do you add them up? And then you have to take into account the groups that are being looked at the time, because agents are actively in the field going after groups. There's more people crossing, turning themselves in. How do you keep all those numbers? But again, the way they do it is the loopholes, because as you said, the people that use the Disneyland Fast app, they're not going to be counted. They're just going to go, turn themselves in somewhere in Central America and get flown into the country. Those don't get added on. The Gotaways, obviously, that's a big concern. You're just going to see more child smuggling in the country, because that's how they're going to know that those individuals are going to preoccupy your time. You have to detain them. Obviously, you have to take care of them. But the smuggling organizations are going to utilize children in order to, preoccupy agents in one spot more than the other. You're going to see, just wait and see, Tommy. I hate to say it, and I hope I'm wrong, because it's horrible to say, but I don't think I am, because I've seen it in the past. They're going to start flooding certain areas with juveniles. That's what they're going to do.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that some of these juveniles are not actually little kids. Some of them are 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe even older than that are pretending to be juveniles. There was just in New York City a 19-year-old Venezuelan who shot 2 cops. That's a 19-year-old. He came over a year ago when he was, I'm guessing, 18 years old. So you've got people coming in that people think it's just these little kids that are coming in. It's not. It's full-blown teenagers that are coming in. And then this is what I'm wondering, too, because nobody wants to talk about this. When these teenagers are coming over, they're probably in gangs in their country. And in Venezuela, that seems to be the pattern. They're in gangs in their country. They come to our country. They link up with fellow gang members in the cities like New York City, Chicago, you name it. And then they just form bigger gangs. There's a migrant moped gang in New York City that's wreaking havoc, that's stealing, that's punching people, that's attacking cops. I mean, what do you think this is going to look at like 3 years from now, when you've got all these millions of people in here and all these millions of people who have joined with other groups of people? What does that even look like for our cities?
And those are the major gaps. Look, they address, this is what we're going to do now. Big picture, little picture, so people can be looking at it and say, oh, look, he's trying. But big picture is right. What do you do with the criminal gangs that have already been brought into the United States? What do you do with the millions that actually claimed asylum that you released? Where are they? Where are all these military-aged men that this administration allowed and has been allowing to enter our country for over 3 years? Where are the gotaways? If it's been so easy to come across into the United States, and we know it has, turn yourself in, ask for asylum, and you get released, then who are these other 2 million gotaways? What were their intentions? Where are they? Where are they from? I mean, you just don't know. The numbers have shown that the agency has detained people from over 160 different countries. It's very frightening, and it's horrible right now because, we go back and forth and we talk about it, Tommy, and to a point, we're screaming at each other in an echo chamber, and we need to be able to spread that word out. People need to know, and I've said it many times, look, illegal is not a race. It has nothing to do with that. We're a country of laws. I have family that has come to this country legally because they want to have a better life, and they have one person and one individual that they know can fix it, and that was the last administration. That's why a lot of people come to this country, is because they want a better life. And this is horrible right now. You can't just open up the gates. As bad as it sounds, that's what this administration has been doing. They haven't been doing any proper vetting of those that they've allowed to come in.
Art, when I was with you, I guess it's been about 3.5 years, was right kind of at the start of the Biden administration. Normally, when I come to the border, I get to go out with Border Patrol. That happened during the Trump administration. The Biden administration didn't want me doing that. And to my knowledge, many haven't been able to since Biden took control, because he didn't want people and journalists out there actually with Border Patrol being shown everything going on. But when you and I were there, I believe we were in Phoenix at the time. Maybe it was, yeah. So we were next to a facility, I believe, kind of run by one of these NGOs. And that was before things got really bad, by the way. This is just right at the start. And you were warning it's about to get worse. But I want you to address, too, from your perspective, these NGOs and these organizations that are operating, and they're making a ton of money off the government to funnel these people through, to put them in hotels or shelters or whatever they are. What can you tell us about what you've seen from those organizations?
So it's frustrating because you're right. They're making a lot of money off of this. You have these privatized locations where, these individuals are housing them, and they're finding out where to release them. But again, they're making a lot of money, and they're not getting prosecuted because some of these individuals are putting, their own little encampments near the line. And you said it right. Look, it's hard to get the information out. And I can tell you from a perspective of being out in Arizona, there's a lot of issues that have happened. You've seen Texas. Texas has done a fantastic job of explaining to people what's going on because, you have the governor there and you have other agencies that are able to expose it. But out here in Arizona, it's been so hush-hush and hard to expose it because some of the own individuals within the government aren't allowing it. You look at the Tohono O'odham Reservation, which is a Native American reservation, over 60 linear miles, and it's hard to get the information out. Yet that has been consistently for 3.5 years the #1 area for gotaways in the entire country. But you don't get that out there because you can't have the video, you don't have the visual, and who's making out? Obviously, the criminals. But at the same time, you're right. The NGOs, they go out there and they place food and supplies. The only ones that are using those supplies are the actual scouts and the smugglers themselves. And they continue to make a lot of money. And you know what's surprising and even more upsetting? Some of those organizations, Tommy, are actually run by retired individuals that work within CBP themselves now.
Wow. That's really, really disappointing to hear. A lot of them front as religious organizations as well. They're Catholic social services or whatever it may be. So it sounds good. And then people of faith and religion go, oh, these religious institutions are down there helping people. This is what Jesus would do. I'm not so sure about that.
No, it is horrible. And you'll see the blankets. You'll see a lot of the blankets from the different religious organizations thrown throughout the entire desert. It's just a mess. There's an encampment out here near Sassabee, Arizona. And it's a pretty big encampment. It's got different tents and it's got all kinds of food and everything. And everyone knows to go there. They go there, they wait, and then they come back out on the road and they turn themselves into Border Patrol. But it's just, if you look at it, the hygiene is horrible there. No one's taking the time to clean it up. It shouldn't be there first and foremost, obviously. But if you see it, that in itself, it's just a horrific sight. I know you've seen it. I put it up on my social media because people need to see how bad it is. It's just amazing how much misinformation is out there, and it's placed by a lot of these groups that don't care. And I don't care how bad I sound. It's individuals that do not care about the country. They don't care about the future of America, and they're just ruining it. every single day more and more so by allowing so much lawlessness in the U.S.
Last question I have for you, Art, is what is Border Patrol Council? What is their plan? What are you guys going to do? I know you're working on awareness, getting the word out. I know that there's a limited amount that you actually can do to affect change, but what's the plan moving forward for your organization in trying to rectify this?
I think that's what it comes down to, is exposing the truth, explaining to people what really is happening, and making sure that the agents are taken care of. Because look, for this longest time during this administration, it's been very difficult morale-wise. It's been very, very difficult for the agents out there to do their job. And what I mean by that is when they're out there doing their job, you saw how they came after them during the horse patrol issue where there was nothing there. And, they were attacking him. You had the president of the United States saying that they were guilty. You had Mayorkas talking about it. You had the chief of the Border Patrol pretty much staying quiet and didn't say anything about it at all. And that's what it comes down to, is just bringing awareness. The MBPC has been doing it for a long time, and it's frustrating too at the same time. I'll be honest, Tommy, because we've been very vocal for a long time. And then you see a lot of people that they retire from the agency. They were up at the top. And then they retire, then they decide to become vocal. And that's also frustrates us, and it frustrates the agents out there, because they say, well, where were these individuals when they were in a position of leadership?
Right. Well, please let everybody know that they're certainly appreciated, and that there are a lot of Americans that understand what's going on, and they understand the plight that everybody in Border Patrol is going through, Border Patrol and ICE going through, wanting to do their jobs, being hamstrung and unable to actually serve their duty. I can't imagine how frustrating that is. So please just let everyone know that we see their frustration. And people like me can't do a whole lot except for try to get Donald Trump back in the White House and then allow him to do what he needs to do. So I guess that's as much as we can hope for.
Bringing a lot of awareness out there. I know a lot of agents that follow you on your social medias, and they're always happy to hear everything you post out there. So you are doing a lot. Trust me. Thank you so much for what you do as well.
Well, thank you. And I will say, when Trump is back in the White House, I want to come back down with Border Patrol and do another Border Patrol tour with the agents, because that was one of the highlights of my career so far, and I hope to do it again.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Art. God bless you, and stay safe out there. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break while I bring in my next guest. Yes, this is a full border episode, because I want to get all the details on this from the people that know it best. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back with former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott. See you in a minute. Oh, it's a big day for border coverage. Every day should be a big day for border coverage. But I want to bring in another expert who happens to be a friend of mine. Spent some time together in San Diego back when things were much, much better on the border. We thought it was bad then. It's so much worse now. But former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott joins me now. Oh, Rodney, when you heard this order come down yesterday, and you heard our senile president talking about he was taking tough action, how tough in your eyes was the action that he may or actually may not take realistically?
Well, I had high hopes, sort of. I had hopes, let's put it that way. But quickly, those hopes were deflated, just kind of like his speech. There was really no substance to the actual executive action. And it doesn't change anything on the border. It sounded tough if you don't pay attention to the process and what we do with people after they've entered the United States illegally. But at the end of the day, it's all political theater, unfortunately, kind of like that Senate bill. There's really no substance to it. It's just for show. And once again, he proves that he really doesn't want to do anything on the border, because just like the executive actions he took on day one, he could have done meaningful actions and secured the border, but he's choosing not to.
So, Ronnie, when you and I were in San Diego, this is before you were Border Patrol Chief. This was, I think maybe 7 years ago at this point. We were there. We were, seeing what was going on. This was after agents had been rocked, after there was kind of that caravan coming through, and they tried to tear down border fencing, and it seemed really bad then. But looking at these numbers with this border executive order, with the 2,500 a day is essentially allowed. If you and I 7 years ago were there, and you saw 2,500 people just being let in, what would you have thought at the time? Would that have seemed like a crisis to you then, back in 2018?
Yeah. And man, time flies and how things change, right? Let's look back at that. So we had information that a caravan of 2,500 people, and it surged in size as it got closer to the border, but that was the initial intel. We had a caravan of 2,500 people headed towards the border. They ended up going to San Diego. So what did we do? As a nation, we surged resources to the border. We installed additional infrastructure, and we made sure that the laws of our country were enforced. And yeah, the migrants and actually some instigators from actually it was Black Lives Matter, it was Antifa, kind of put themselves in there as well. And they started rocking our agents. And again, we're not going to back down. We actually stood up for America, protected the border. We made sure nobody came through the border. Today, it's the exact opposite. We're inviting people from around the world, and we're telling Border Patrol agents to back off and let them come. And we're not even talking, like you saw the border wall in San Diego we were putting up. We're not even talking about the fact that actually significantly improved the environment on both sides of the border. But now smugglers are enticing people to climb up that 30-foot wall and drop over. Border injuries and border deaths are actually increasing significantly because of Biden's policies. They try to act like it's humane, but it's not. They're actually killing and hurting more illegal aliens, more migrants than any administration in the past, while putting all of America at risk. It's just insanity.
It definitely is insanity, but I think it's crazy when we think back to when these caravans were about to come over, and there was a lot of hysteria about the caravans being, a couple thousand people, and now we look at a couple thousand people as, well, that's the acceptable amount. We're okay if that many come through a day, but boy, if it gets above that, then we're gonna maybe shut it down for 14 days until it drops 1,000, and then we're gonna reopen it again. I mean, what is this, Disney World? I don't know, but I feel like we're in the season finale of America. That's what this really feels like when we're watching our country be invaded and overtaken by these illegal immigrants coming over. But then, we've got this executive order so that Biden can say that he's done something. I'm wondering, in your eyes, as somebody who sees this, who knows what it is, who knows the reality every day, do you think that we're going to see a drop because of this that's going to be tangible, that's going to be feelable for Americans that are really pissed off about the immigration situation?
So rhetoric does matter on both sides. And a lot of times you'll see a short-term drop-off with strong rhetoric about border security, or like what we had at the beginning of the Trump administration, or open borders rhetoric like we had at the beginning of the Biden administration. But long-term, they're smarter than that. Both the cartels and the people from around the world trying to come to our country, they wait and see what actual policies have changed. And when you look at this executive action, here's the pieces that are missing. And hopefully everybody pays attention to this. There's nothing about removal. There's no increase in actually deportation flights. There's no increase in detention space. And the reason we have this border crisis right now is because this administration reinstituted catch and release. And everybody released calls home and tells their friends and family, hey, I got in, here's a smuggler to call. And then the second and the third wave comes across. And I got to highlight real quick, too. We've heard of prior administrations, Jeb Johnson actually saying 1,000 arrests a day overwhelms the system. But I want everybody to understand what that really means. Over 1,000 illegal entries a day overwhelms U.S. Border Patrol, and it puts them into a purely reactive state, which means they're basically just babysitting and taking care of the people that already came across. What that does is it leaves hundreds, if not thousands of miles of border wide open for the cartels to now pick and choose who gets to enter our country, because they pick and choose who's in that second wave that they bring across once Border Patrol is overwhelmed. What Biden has done is normalized not only illegal immigration at these ungodly numbers of 1,500 or 2,500, depending on which threshold you're looking at, but he's guaranteed that the cartels get to maintain the decision-making authority of who gets to come into our country and what, by making sure that those numbers are always over 1,000. That is a national security threat. The Biden administration knows what they're doing. They've been briefed on this stuff before, and they're putting every other nation above what's best for America.
Yeah. I want to turn now to, you mentioned the exceptions to the rule. I mean, we'll call it the rule. I have to laugh when I say it. But Secretary Mayorkas was on yesterday with Neil Cavuto, and Neil was pressing him on some of the exemptions, one of them being for unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied children. And I don't really hear an answer from Mayorkas, but I want to play the clip and see if you can decipher the BS coming out of his mouth. Let's take a listen.
The one thing I didn't understand, Secretary, there are a number of exemptions for this, including, unaccompanied children. And isn't that a green light for drug cartels to take advantage of that? And, the whole purpose of this, it sort of blows up in your face.
Oh, absolutely not.
But
Neil,
who's going to watch those unaccompanied
accepted
children? If they are allowed and you don't ship them back, you don't do anything like that. So where do they go?
Neil, we deal with unaccompanied children in a humanitarian way, adhering to our values. We deter irregular migration. We build lawful pathways.
But this encourages
we have
drug
programs
cartels
for
to
minors.
take advantage of those kids, does it not, sir?
Neil, we're taking it to the drug cartels with unprecedented strength through our transnational criminal investigative units.
No, this is actually a green light for those
customs
cartels.
enforcement.
Isn't that the fear, that this was actually green lighting and say, oh, God, we can use these kids as pawns to get what we want?
Neil, let's be clear. The cartels, the smuggling organizations are unscrupulous. They exploit individuals of all different types of vulnerabilities. We are taking it to the cartels. We accepted unaccompanied children from this asylum bar because of the compelling humanitarian picture they present.
So this is the same song and dance. He always says this. Oh, Neil. That's also a nice deflection technique. He just keeps repeating Neil's name. But he talks about we're going to do it in a humanitarian way, with putting American values and this irregular migration. I mean, when you listen to that, there's no answer there. But it's because if he was answering accurately, what does actually happen to the so-called unaccompanied minors?
Yeah, so isn't it telling that almost every cabinet level official currently answers questions the same way? They don't. They just spit out the same talking points that are completely irrelevant to the conversation. So what happens today with unaccompanied juveniles is Border Patrol processes them. They get handed off to HHS, Health and Human Services, as quickly as possible. And then they find sponsors for them in the U.S. But more importantly, this is what's really going on. And I really want to highlight this. This administration has been over backwards to make sure that child trafficking is alive and well. And I am not stating that like with any kind of, anything other than just facts. Like, this is horrible. But the Senate bill actually did not touch unaccompanied juveniles. It didn't touch the Flores Agreement. This executive order leaves the child smuggling. It carves out the UACs. And let's think through this a little bit more. The only two ways that the United States Border Patrol has ever identified child trafficking is through good face-to-face interviews with the actual kids and the people bringing them across, and rapid DNA testing. This administration has shut off both. They shut off the rapid DNA testing for no unexplainable reason. And then the massive numbers that they're locking in at a minimum of 1,500 a day up to 2,500 a day prevents Border Patrol from doing those deep dive interviews. So that the child trafficking schemes and that flow of unaccompanied kids from around the world is just going to do two things. It is going to give it to the cartels. It's going to give them billions of dollars worth of cash. And then it's also, and that's not just the smuggling piece, that's from the trafficking piece on this end as well, because the sponsors aren't vetted as well as they should be. We just don't have time to do it. And again, this administration talks in circles and refuses to be transparent with America. That's the underlying issue across multiple subject matters, if you will. This administration just really won't answer questions and tell America what's really going on.
I remember the hysteria that there was during the Trump administration about all the kids that they lost, and they separated kids from their parents. And I remember the hysteria of the kids in cages that were Obama's cages. I spent time with you. I spent time with border agents. They're like, listen, the kids are not in cages. We have to separate them from the grown-ass men for their safety. We have to separate people so that they're not all just together, and we don't know who's going to be exploited. We don't know who's going to be injured. We don't know who's going to be assaulted. I mean, this is just wild to me that we're in this place now. But I want to talk about that because I have high hopes that Donald Trump is going to be reelected, and I have high hopes that he's going to be back in the White House and he's going to take action, real action on this on day one. But I'm wondering from your perspective, having gone through the Trump administration and seeing the hysteria, Donald Trump comes in, he says, we're going to reinstitute X, Y, and Z, remain in Mexico. We're going to have zero tolerance once again on the border. What do you think the hysteria is going to be? If that happens, do you think that people are going to lose their minds again? AOC is going to come crying in her white outfit. What does that even look like?
So first off, the left is going to go crazy and there is going to be hysteria because they have a way of hijacking America's compassion. And again, by only telling a little piece here or there, they don't talk about the fact that when all these kids come across, they're being exploited and shoved into human trafficking schemes. They only talk about the individual poor migrant. They don't, trying to come up and make a better life. But here's the thing. We've learned a lot. So the last administration actually leveraged lessons learned by prior administrations. They listened to seasoned Border Patrol agents, then border security experts, and then we implemented policies and programs. We didn't do everything perfect, but we learned from our mistakes and or just the second and third level effects that we didn't see. And we're going to be able to, the next administration, if they leverage all those lessons, and I believe they will, they're going to be able to do it even faster, better, and smarter than we did before. We have to shut down our border and protect America. And it's also protecting those kids. But as a friend of mine, Tom Homan, always says, tell me one negative, one drawback of having a secure border. All the secure border means is that we make conscious decisions about who and what enters our country, and we force them to come through the front door of the ports of entry. This is not xenophobic. It's not crazy. And I think we're better at the messaging now than we used to be as well.
Well, I think we just have to stop caring about the messaging. I think Donald Trump gets back in the White House. I think he carries out a mass deportation effort. So I want to ask you, too. I mean, all the time that you spent, Border Patrol, Chief of Border Patrol, the agents right now, obviously, rightfully so, very demoralized. Not only are they attacked and demonized, but they also are not able to do their job. But I'm wondering, they will for sure be attacked and demonized if Donald Trump is once again our president and he implements these tough policies. They're going to be demonized probably like never before. But do you think, because they would be given the chance to actually safeguard our country, do you think Border Patrol agents, this go around, this second Trump administration that we're hoping we have, do you think that they're going to be able to withstand the demonization because they know they're doing their job? Are they excited for that, in your opinion?
Absolutely. Every Border Patrol agent I've ever met is more than willing to take shots across the bow, if you will, when they're doing what is right, because internally they know what they're doing is actually protecting Americans and it's actually protecting people around the globe, regardless of the lies that the left puts out there. So they don't like being demonized. Obviously, no one does. But I think like anybody, when you at your core know what you're doing is right and everything aligns, your core values, the Constitution of the United States, the oath that you raised your hand and took to protect the Constitution and this country, when those all align, it really doesn't matter what some crazy, on the left in this particular case throws at you, somebody like AOC making just stupid allegations. It's irritating, but it doesn't get to your core. Right now, what gets to their core is they feel like they're part of the smuggling network and it's going completely against their core values and the oath that they took, but they feel like they really can't do anything about it. Next administration, day one, speech to the agents, hey, go do your job. We're going to fix the policies. We're going to put things back in place, but no, we've actually got your back. We understand you're supposed to protect America, and we're not going to make lies about an agent on horseback just for political talking points.
Right. So I want to ask you too. Let's look ahead, hoping that there's going to be another Trump administration. Rodney, I spent time during the Trump administration. I went on 6 border tours. I got to go to every single border state, and I got to see what was going on. I got to do it with Border Patrol. I got to see, the command centers. I got to spend time with you at the wall and the different pieces of wall. If there is a next Trump administration, do you think Border Patrol will then be open to people like me being able to go and do that once again? Because I would never be allowed right now. Biden would not allow it. Mayorkas would not allow it. But do you think a next Trump administration, people like me, would we be welcomed back down to tell the real story?
100%. And thank you for bringing that up, Tommy. So under the Trump administration, when I was selected as chief, my marching orders from the White House were just go tell America what's going on. We were literally, we debated about installing cameras at the border for the public to be able to see the wall construction, just to kind of get away from a bunch of the lies we heard on the public media. But literally, it was about how do we expand transparency? We created that CBP webpage where you can see the stats and summaries. Unfortunately, on January 21st, 2021, when the Biden administration came in, I was told I was no longer allowed to speak publicly without their permission and scripted talking points. That alone, everything else we just talked about, from an American standpoint, that alone should make the hair on Americans' neck stand up. Why are they hiding stuff from us? They're our elected officials. They're supposed to be running the country for us. And if there's one thing that differentiates these two potential candidates, it's that. The Trump administration, whether you like it or not, was unbelievably transparent, open with what they're going to do and why, took questions. Like you said, I couldn't tell you how many border tours I gave people, and I would stand and answer questions. The Biden administration wants to hide everything from everyone, and they shove somebody like Mayorkas up there to talk in circles and refuse to answer questions. Why?
Yeah, why? Because they don't want people to know what's really going on. Well, we appreciate you for speaking out, as always, and breaking this down for the American people. It's the number one issue. In November, Trump won on it last time, back in 2016, and it's even worse now. So, and going along with that logic, this should be another winning issue. It's sad that this has to be the issue because it's gotten that bad, but let's just hope we can save it before it gets too bad. And let's hope that Donald Trump gets back in office and makes some tough decisions. I think we now hopefully have the intestinal fortitude to know what needs to be done. Rodney, thank you as always for joining me. I appreciate it, and I hope that to go through you for another border tour when that day comes.
Appreciate it, Tommy. Take care.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, the next time a liberal whines to you about gun safety, you just remind them of two words: Hunter Biden. It's time for Final Thoughts. Hunter Biden, the president's former crack addict son, is facing felony charges for allegedly lying on a federal form to obtain a firearm while being an admitted drug addict. Unlike Donald Trump's alleged crime of paying hush money to a porn star and marking it incorrectly on the books, Hunter's alleged crime is actually dangerous. Throwing said gun in a dumpster and blaming it on a Mexican, also dangerous. Which is why, for the life of me, I just can't figure out why the gun safety activists are not up in arms, no pun intended, over this. Where is David Hogg? Where is the Protect Kids Not Guns crowd? And where is Gavin Newsom? So daily, I see Gavin Newsom's Twitter ad, this one to be exact, wherein he implores us to sign on to his constitutional amendment to restrict gun rights. He wants to be the face of sensible gun safety, huh? Well, shoot, I can't think of anything more sensible than keeping firearms away from admitted crack addicts. Can you, Gavin? The left has no center of gravity, no moral compass. They simply squawk and slither and make up the rules as they go. Hypocrisies and double standards are their baselines, and while I'm not surprised, I just had to take the opportunity to point that one out. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern, a new round of Losers to Crown. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. I would sure appreciate it. Until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tomi Lahren is Fearless. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you'll never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.